Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Shauna Cooper, the Director of Programs at Ribbon, and I am delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, which is titled Living Positively, Stories of Resilience. So again, thank you for joining us. Today is National HIV Testing Day, a day dedicated to raising awareness about the significance of HIV testing and early diagnosis. This day is an important reminder of our advancements in HIV treatment and our continued efforts to reduce the stigma associated with HIV testing. Before we dive in, I would like to invite each of you to introduce yourselves in the chat box. So please type your name and where you're joining us from in the chat box. This is just a great way to see who is coming together with us to have such a rich discussion and conversation. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and it will be available to you later this evening on our YouTube channel. I will post the link to that channel in the chat box shortly for those who would like to watch the replay. Also, to ensure that the audio remains clear so that everyone can enjoy the replay, I will kindly ask that you mute your microphones during the presentation. Do note that there will be an opportunities during the discussion for you to come off the mic to ask a question or to share a comment. A little bit about Ribbon, who is the host of this webinar. So Ribbon is a national nonprofit organization, and our aim is to end racial and social disparities in health and wealth by providing consultation, training, and technical assistance to health and human service providers, networks, and individuals impacted by chronic health conditions, including HIV. Ribbon is the national technical assistance provider of this very initiative, in which helps this webinar to be possible. The funder of this initiative is Gilead, and the name of the initiative is HIV Age Positively. And so as a technical assistance provider, we support 23 organizations across the US that are focused on enhancing the quality of life for persons with HIV who are 50 years of age and older. In a nutshell, what we do is about empowerment and providing robust support to improve well-being. Today's webinar will feature an interview-style Q&A format and will last roughly about 75 minutes. We look forward to an enlightened discussion with our guest speakers, whom you'll be introduced to shortly, who will share their powerful journeys and transformative advocacy within the HIV community. Without further ado, I now turn it over to Denise, who is our Senior Program Associate on the ROC4Aging project at Ribbon. Denise, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shauna. So again, my name is Denise Drayton. I'm a long-term survivor, having been diagnosed positive in 1993. As to Ribbon Organizing Center's initiatives, such as the EPIC program, as well as I support various programs and initiatives across the Ribbon organization. So today, like Shauna said, we are privileged to hear from individuals who are long-term survivors and experts in HIV education and advocacy, who will discuss their journeys to self-acceptance and the various strategies that they have used to overcome adversity and to thrive. So this event is about recognizing human stories and the incredible resilience, empowerment, and advocacy that define the HIV positive community. Oh, okay. So I'd like to warmly welcome our panelists. Thank you for your participation and your willingness to share your insights and your experiences. But before we begin, let me introduce our esteemed panelists by reading their bios. Greg Casson. Greg Casson, a 35-year-old HIV survivor, is a charismatic speaker and facilitator with extensive experience in HIV/AIDS, LGBTQ, support long-term survivors through storytelling and community connection. Greg also established the San Francisco Healing Circle and the San Francisco Center for Living, and has been presented with AIDS, medicine, and miracles. He has received a certificate of special recognition from the U.S. Congress and honors from the city of San Francisco. He's been featured in documentaries like Absolutely Positive and That's a Family. Greg is an LGBTQ rights activist who has organized anti-Prop 8/DOMA rallies since 2008. He's also a proud father and grandfather to three. Our next presenter is Yance Garcia Castillo. Yance is a transgender woman who grew up in foster care and was diagnosed with HIV in high school. She dedicates her life to inspiring and educating others about disproportionate impact of HIV on Black and LGBTQ communities. As a staunch advocate for ending HIV stigma, Yance promotes the undetectable equals untransmittable U equals U message. She is a certified PrEP navigator, certified recovery peer advocate, family seeking safety facilitator, and she's a peer counselor. Yance has also served as an expert consultant and spokesperson for the Owning HIV, Young Adults and the Fight Ahead campaign. Currently, she works at a respite care center at Commune Life, advocating for patients' well-being. Our next presenter is Melanie Reese, 72. She's a subject matter expert and a 25-year long-term HIV survivor using the pronouns she, they, them. She serves as the executive director of OWELL, board secretary of ICWNA, and is involved with the Maryland Coalition on HIV and Aging and the Maryland Coalition to Decriminalize HIV. She's a member of the 2022-2023 Zero Project Social Justice Institute cohort. She's also a Maryland U equals U ambassador, co-chair to the BCHB-HPG and Community Center. And she's part of the Johns Hopkins ICTR Center. Now, all of these acronyms, I didn't get with Melanie to knock them out and understand each one. But believe me, Melanie is an expert on what she does. She's a strong expert. She's been working for, she's one of the leads on the PWNUSA's Maryland State Initiative. She's also a member of the Texas Strike Force and Rapid Response Team. She's a non-committee Women of Color member. And most importantly, her roles include speaker, author, moderator, panelist, advocate, activist, community organizer, and community engagement, citizen scientist, researcher. Melanie's loaded up with a very strong background. Our next speaker is Anthony J. Scruggs. Anthony is an inspiring advocate from Trenton, New Jersey, whose commitment to community upliftment has shaped by his experience in Baltimore, Maryland, and Philadelphia, PA. After his HIV diagnosis in 2016, Anthony founded Visible Truth 365, transforming a social media campaign into a movement, offering direct services, resources, and consulting. He serves as the Civic Engagement Fellow for PA at Take Resource Center and contributes to Positively Trans with the Transgender Law Center. Recently appointed as Director of Programs with the Road Project, Anthony also trains for NMAC's Elevate program. I just did that program, it was excellent. Coaches HIV advocacy and serves on the Philadelphia HIV Integrated Planning Council. His work exemplifies resilience, passion, and dedication to positive change. And last but not least, Victor Velasquez. Victor has been a driving force in the fight against HIV and AIDS. He has been trained in a range of modalities, including adult learning, alcoholism, substance use, abuse treatment, HIV, AIDS, and other chronic conditions. He's also a recovery coach and trainer and has trained as a mental health first aid provider. Diagnosed in 1994, Victor has turned his experience into a powerful message of resilience and hope. Victor's dedication to the cause is also evident in the work as a pioneer in HIV activism and a respected board member at Seattle's Root Community Health Center. He's also played a key role in developing educational curriculums and fostering collaborations across organizations. Victor's passion and expertise are truly inspiring. He is a beacon of light in the fight against HIV and AIDS, and his work is making a real difference in the lives of others. So I want to, again, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to an enlightening and inspiring discussion. So I'd like to begin our discussion with Greg Casson, and I want to ask Greg, what motivated you to start honoring our experience in 2012, and how has the program evolved over the years to support long-term HIV survivors? Greg?
Great. Thank you, Denise. And hi, everybody. It's really an honor to be here. Grateful to be speaking on the panel and to be meeting everybody and the people that are joining us. So I tested positive around 1985. And in 1989, I started facilitating groups. I started my own group because I was going to lots of groups, and I was one of those people that was saying, oh, they should have said this, or they should have done the group that way, they should have done this. So I thought, instead of being judgy and being rude, why don't you just start your own group and do it the way you think you should do it? So in 1989, I started facilitating groups, and then I did that for years and years, and my group was always around the building of community. It was about having people connect with one another. And what I found was that one of the greatest healers of stigma and shame was being in a group of people where you recognize just how great the other people were. And I remember going to one of my first groups that was like this big group. It was a large format group, and it was a very healing group. And I remember going in there feeling like this diseased pariah. And it was by being in this room and seeing all these people that I had so much respect and love for. And I thought, if they're innocent, if they're good, you must be too. And I realized, oh my God, it's community that heals me. So then I was on disability for a while. I was helping raise a daughter, and then I started feeling like I really wanted to be back in the community. And I recognized that I had seen a film about long-term survivors, but it wasn't about, they weren't calling them long-term survivors. It was just a documentary about San Francisco in the early days of the AIDS epidemic. And I thought, oh, that's my thing. I want to start working with long-term survivors, people that were diagnosed at the time when there was no treatment, when there was so little hope, when there was so much fear and so much shame, and people were taking care of their loved ones, but also needing to take care of themselves, going to doctor's appointments. And so I started this group called Honoring Our Experience. I started it in San Francisco, and it all began at similar times of other groups of long-term survivors at the AIDS Foundation and the Reunion Project. So many groups were starting and recognized like, oh, we are a cohort of people that deserve to come together and to tell their stories. So I started this group called Honoring Our Experience, and I do a couple of retreats a year and different programs. And it is really about honoring. It's the title. I love the title because it handles it all. It's just honoring our experience. So we started with very first retreat was only long-term survivors. It was both positive and negative because we recognized there were so many people in the community that were not, the HIV negative allies, the partners of people with HIV, the people that were long-term like advocates and activists. So we even invited them. And then we recognized that it was too powerful to have all these people to come together and not have younger people and newly diagnosed people. So now the retreat is based in long-term survivors, but it includes everybody that feels like they would benefit from being part of the process. And so it's remarkable. It's incredibly diverse. There's, like all different races and ethnicities and communities of people. And I feel like that's what makes it so powerful. So I did that because I felt like there was a story and a healing that needed to happen. That was something unique that we needed to come together as folks that had lived through this very dark time. And many of the people that were coming to the early retreats were people that had lost their entire chosen family, all of their friends and loved ones that they had lost. So that's why I started 12 years ago. And now I love what it has evolved into, because it's really evolved into a really diverse program.
Yes, that's excellent. I like what you said about that you felt like the community, yes, the community heals me, and so honoring our experience addresses the many issues relating to long-term survivors, stigma, post-traumatic stress disorder, and isolation, multiple loss and depression. So what coping mechanisms have you found to be most effective for yourself and others in maintaining resilience amongst the stigma of post-traumatic stress disorder and isolation?
Well, we're at a very fortunate time right now because, so I feel like I come at a lucky time. People for years, several of my friends would say like, "Oh, that's great. He has a New York accent, but he's very touchy-feely, like a Californian." And so recently, there's been so much on podcasts and information that's come out, and through the U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy has talked about the incredible importance of reducing isolation and of communities of people coming together. And he's basing his work, his whole mission, around reducing isolation. And he uses the word love. He says that love is the first medicine and it's the most powerful medicine. And it's powerful to hear that come from a doctor, that's the nation's doctor, the person who's giving this message. And he's saying that we need one another. And one of the things that if you can look him up, U.S. Surgeon General, he's on a million different podcasts, and he talks about don't underestimate the power of your love, the power of another's love, the power of your community's love, your family's love to transform your life. And one of the things he takes it from is the Harvard study. And the Harvard study has been going on for almost 80 years, and they studied communities of people. They started with Harvard boys 80 years ago. So it was a bunch of probably rich white boys. And then they opened it up, and they opened it up to the wives, to the children, to the greater community. So now 80 years later, and it was the study of human behavior and wellness. And what they found after close to 80 years of studying these individuals and interviewing them every 2 years, they found that it wasn't gender, it wasn't wealth, it wasn't geography, it wasn't race. None of those things were predictors to someone's mental health, someone's happiness, someone's wellness, and even their longevity. The thing that affected it the most was whether they were in loving and supportive community with family members, with community. So that's why they have all these blue zones of where elders are connected with one another. And for some reason, it affects their how well they age, how healthy they are. So the Harvard study is phenomenal because it really gives you the little kick in the pants to say, I think that I can do this all on my own, but we are essential to one another.
Absolutely.
We need one another. And it's the thing that all of us knew early on. When we were first diagnosed, everybody knew, I have to find someone else to talk to about this. I have to find someone to support me. That's the healing power that we had to join together. We had to cry on each other's shoulders. And as I always say to Denise, I found that with the gay men's support groups, so many of them remained as support groups. But I found the more that I was with women and with women's organizations, they would take you in and they would give you the support, and then they train you how to be an activist, and they give you a kick on the butt and tell you to go fight for your rights and go fight for treatment and go create an organization and create a movement. And I feel like that is what we're being, I think now that it proves, clinical trials prove, you have to come together with other people to love and support you. Nobody can do this alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love conquers all things, as they say. Thank you so much for that insight, Greg, and I appreciate everything. Yonsei, you're up next. And so my question for you is, as a U equals U ambassador, how do you educate others about undetectable equals untransmittable? And what impact do you hope to achieve through this type of advocacy?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. Hi. So before we begin, as you can see, my name is Yance Garcia Castillo. I'm formerly known as Yance Jones through my advocacy, but I recently married, and so I want to make sure I honor who I am. And that's a great segue into the question. So as a U equals U ambassador, I combat stigma and I deliver truth that undetectable, untransmittable is zero risk formula, because people try to put in their version of what U equals U is, but no, it's zero risk. So I cannot pass on HIV, and the fact that I can't, I love that, and I share that with people because I want to segue into relationships. When I've been in relationships with someone, it's usually someone who was HIV negative. They were HIV negative when we entered the relationship, and they were HIV negative when they exited the relationship. So that alone speaks to the formula of U equals U. Because of stigma, people are afraid to talk about HIV. We whisper HIV. We still do it today because I find myself doing it sometimes, depending on where I'm at. And I was called on it. My sister called on me. We were in a restaurant and I whispered HIV. And she said, "Why are you whispering HIV? We don't do that. We don't do that." And I caught myself. So that's some internalized stigma that I have. And that stems from a long history of telling someone with HIV that they don't matter, that they're going to die, that they're dirty, or when they're using your bathroom, the spraying and the bleach, and just making someone with HIV feel uncomfortable and ostracized and outcast. Many trans women that look like myself, I'm just going to speak my truth, where I come from in the Bronx, Black, we don't have a lot of services. We are housed in poor conditions sometimes. You're lucky if you find if you find housing at all, okay? A lot of us are in abusive relationships, and a lot of us don't have a means to support ourselves. The little bit of food stamps that we get, or the little public assistance, we're forced to sometimes do things that we may not want to do, like sex work, for instance, and living with someone who is not right for us, but we're going to stick it out because we need a place to stay. So I say all that because it's all connected. If I have a place to live, I can take my medicine, I can go see my doctor, I can get mental health services, and I can be a human being. So my advocacy started when I was 15 years old. I just took a summer job just to take it. And I was so interested in the formula and so fascinated with giving information back to, I was in a group home, bringing it back to people. So that's been in my blood to be an advocate. I started when I was 15 and I'm still going strong because it hits close to home. It hit close to home with me. And it also hit close to home with my brother. Recently, and I've been doing this work for a while, my brother passed away, and it was from complications with HIV because he did not have the information to protect himself. And I say protect because we all should have the tools to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm a strong advocate for telling the truth. If you tell the truth, and people don't want to honor that sometimes. Your truth is your truth, and you should definitely live your truth because things don't stay the same forever. Look at my story, for instance.
Absolutely. So that's a good lead into the next question, which is sometimes we also don't get the things that we need through the healthcare system. So what advice would you give to healthcare professionals to better support trans women living with HIV?
And not just trans women, trans individuals, because we have trans men out there also, and we have gender non-conforming, and it's all together on how they treat us. So I would just say, see me as a person. Don't look at me as, oh, that's Beyonce, the trans woman. I'm Beyonce. I'm not Beyonce, the woman with HIV. I'm Beyonce. So that's first and foremost. Listen to me. Listen to my needs. Understand me. You cannot be my provider if you know nothing about me. If you know nothing about my skin color, where I come from, what neighborhood I live in, that the fact that I'm transgender, the fact that I'm struggling, the fact that I have no home, no job, and I'm hungry, but you want to give me care, but you don't know who you're trying to treat, whether it's mental, a doctor. And I'm going to go even further. There's other organizations abroad that get funding for people with HIV. And I would say use that money where it's supposed to be used. Don't put it over here and dibble and dabble in our pot, because what you're doing is you're taking away from the needs of people that you're saying that this is the money that is supposed to help them. And advertisement. It's nice to see Manhattan all shiny and nice and all the people in the glitz and glam, but we need the proper advertisement, and we need to get the truth out there. Because when I talk to young women, they often tell me, oh, I'm not gay, or my boyfriend's not gay, and I'm not engaging in that gay stuff, so I don't need to hear about it. And we all know that is false. So yeah, I'm all about the truth. I'm all about shutting stigma down.
Yeah, I agree with you on the advertisements. They have all kind of advertisements in bus stations, on subway trains, but very little information that can be helpful to us as people living with HIV or for HIV prevention. I remember when they rolled out the PrEP campaign, they neglected to bring women into that. And so you didn't see a lot of women on those advertisements. So now things are changing, but certainly we need more changes to come about. Thank you so much, Beyonce. I'm going to move on to Melanie. Melanie, can you share your personal journey of living with HIV for 25 years and how it has shaped your advocacy work?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I've been living with HIV for 25 years. I was diagnosed in 1999 after a date rape. And when I got my diagnosis, I had known about HIV, I had known about AIDS, but I knew it as GRID, or the gay man's cancer. I was not aware that me as a woman could acquire HIV. So that sent me into a spiral. And at the time I was getting my care at Kaiser. I did not see any publications about HIV or anything in Kaiser. And when I realized that women could acquire it, I went to reputable internet sites and learned everything I could find about HIV and the transmission, what how it's transmitted, were there treatments available, were there support groups? I wanted to know everything. I became thirsty for education because I used to think I kept myself up and abreast with all current information. But hearing that I was HIV positive, I realized I had dropped the ball, and I needed to find this out. And I changed my care to Johns Hopkins uh, Moore Clinic, because Johns Hopkins was a big medical and academic institution that had research, that had information, pamphlets, people in the clinic, not necessarily outside of the clinic, were talking about HIV and different things that were occurring with them. And I found the Consumer Advisory Board and decided, let me see what I can learn from that. I found that volunteering, getting information, attending lunch and learns, which brought people from Johns Hopkins and outside of Hopkins to come in for those of us living with HIV to learn more about treatment, about care, about taking care of ourselves, and being positive. Have your attitude be positive, because that in and of itself can do a lot to keep your mind focused on staying well and staying adherent to your treatment. And from the Consumer Advisory Board, I found out about a Project LEAP, Leadership Empowerment, Advocacy, and Participation. And that was a 6-month workshop on learning all the different facets of advocacy, organizing, having workshops, and being able to speak where people could understand you. And so it was a well-rounded program. When I graduated from that on December 1st, 2003, I was a warrior. Anyone who I could see who was struggling with the fact that they were HIV positive, that would be my goal and mission, to let them feel how you can change from that, because I was that at first, to someone now who wants to learn more, do more, and help others. And so my 25 years of living, volunteering, going to conferences, being on the Consumer Advisory Board, being on the Planning Council or the HIV Planning Group, and then branching out to community groups, going where people living with HIV normally don't go, to let those people know there are people who are living close to you or in your house who are living with HIV. So this is something that you need to care about. And so when I branched out to that, I got into research. And I have no problem telling anyone I am HIV positive. And every group that I was in, when they came around to do the introduction, I introduced myself as Melanie Reese. I have been living with HIV for the number of years, and I know some people think, you're a woman. I didn't think HIV was a thing. And I said, well, that's exactly why I'm here, to tell you it's still a thing. Women can get it, and that you need to be aware, and you need to be open and accepting to people who are living with HIV. They are whole human beings.
Excellent. Melanie, so everybody knows now that if you want to become a part of an advisory group and you see Melanie, go sit next to her. She'll mentor you. Because a lot of times we join advisory boards and groups, and a lot of times we don't know. We want to make a difference. We're anxious to get involved like a warrior. We got that warrior spirit, but we don't know what it means to be a part of a planning group or an advisory board. So, she volunteered, she educated herself, and then when you see her in a meeting, sit next to her and make her explain some things to you, because she obviously knows. So I want to ask you this question, Melanie. How do you address the intersectionality of age, gender, and HIV status in your advocacy work? And why is this approach important?
Intersectionality is very important because none of us lives a singular linear life. We are all members of various communities but they all intersect at some point. And so you have to address all those issues, and especially when you're trying to bring people in who only see HIV as a single issue disease. When you're doing advocacy work and activism, yes, I have HIV. Yes, I need medical care. But what's most important is I need stable, affordable, safe housing. I need to have access to transportation to get places. I need access to certain places where they may look at me different because, hey, I'll be 72 tomorrow. So ageism is an issue. I'm Black. I grew up every day I was Black, and I faced discrimination, rejection, spit on. Nobody wanted to sit near me. Followed in stores, so I already knew about that. And then being a Black woman, men would see me as an object, not as Melanie, who has a whole being, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual. They only saw me as a sex object, and having to combat that. So all those things aren't separate from my being HIV. HIV, when I acquired it, became part of that. So when people say, oh, stigma is the worst, yes, stigma is the worst, but it's multi-layered. Oh, we have to get rid of HIV stigma. No, we have to get rid of all stigma. We have to get rid of all discrimination. We have to see all people, whether we think like them, want to be like them or not, they are whole people, and they're living their experience to the fullest, even if it doesn't align with the way I'm living my life. But when we can accept everybody's choices and how they want to live and express, that gets closer to freedom than what most people think of freedom. So that really helps my ability to do activism and advocacy, because I can reach people on all different levels and then let them elevate themselves to be able to see it more like that than not.
That was a wonderful answer. Thank you for being so open and honest. Thank you, Melanie. AJ, I want to turn to you next and just ask, how did your diagnosis with HIV in 2016 influence your approach to advocacy and deepen your commitment to supporting marginalized communities?
Ooh, okay. So kind of wrote out my answer. So I'm gonna pull out some of the stuff that actually came back to me. So
Good.
first I want to give everybody a proper introduction. My name is AJ Scruggs. My pronouns are he, him, they, them, and king. Use them all, or please just use my name. It's the most respectful way that you can address a person if you do not want to use pronouns. My diagnosis in 2016 it just changed my direction of my advocacy. I was already doing work as a transgender person who was on YouTube as one of the first Black trans men to document his entire journey on YouTube. Like the first couple of years are usually very private for Black trans men, and I didn't see guys that looked like me. So I took it into my own hands to kind of like make myself visible as a Black trans man. And then that garnered a bunch of support and a following to the point where I was able to host lives where discussions would happen. So I became trusted within the community. I built up my community reputation. So a couple of things. 2016 brought up the diagnosis, and the diagnosis couldn't come at a worse time because it was the day after the election results. So it was just a bad boom boom to the chest. But what I think not only saved my life was me being able to watch a documentary called 30 on 30 with Magic Johnson. And it was called The Announcement, when he announced that he had been diagnosed. And as crazy as people treated him, I watched the senator say, with all due respect, Mr. Johnson, you're gonna die. Um, he took it on the chin and said, I have a voice and I have to be a voice for this thing.
Mm.
That to me is a Black man showing up for his community. And as a Black trans man, that in itself was enough to motivate me to be a voice for this thing. So after that, I met Asham Howard, who I have affectionately adopted as my trans father, who is also a Black trans man in doing HIV work. And through him, I was able to go to the Block program, which is the precursor to the Elevate program, which I went through and eventually became a trainer and a coach for the program, which I love my Elevate family. I see Shantae in in the chat, and it gave me the tools I needed to become a more knowledgeable advocate, to be able to share that information with not just the larger Black community, but more specifically trans men, because there aren't enough trans men in the HIV workforce. So that has been the segue to me creating Guys Like Us. Guys Like Us is that it started out as a research project. Through that research project, we found a way to attack HIV in a different way, and that's through education. So we have a training program now where we are taking guys through the steps to be better trainers, advocates, leveraging their lived experiences, living with HIV to get more involved, and also bettering the community with knowledge. So it's not just me that you have to call on. You now have this pack of guys to call upon to say, hey, do you have this level of expertise? If not, where can we, who else within the network can we talk to?
You kind of answered my second question, which was, in your opinion, what is the most effective ways to empower communities facing HIV, and how can advocates and activists work together for lasting change? You kind of handled that, but if you want to expand on it a little bit more, expound, and you can.
Absolutely. So there's multiple ways that you can actively do this. I think one of the ways that I have always done things is I go through the process first, and then I'm able to teach what I've learned to others. So I have done some work with Take to where we are now actively moving 4 bills of legislation through the PA legislature. And that's being done without a college degree. So you can't tell me that it's not possible out here, people. One bill is for non-discrimination. The other one is non-disclosure. The other is inclusive LGBTQ curriculum. And the other one is bathroom and locker room policies. I know that in the state of Pennsylvania, that HIV criminalization is a felony charge, but it can only be added to charges that affect trans people, specifically trans women. So I'm going after HIV criminalization in that aspect, teaching other folks how to work with your local representative, working with folks doing all of that legislative work. And then on the ground, for my abolitionists that want to tear stuff down and burn stuff up, take to the streets, protest, also demand audience with your local representatives and those who can impact that change. Learning that process is not about you having to sit in that office. It's learning how to write down your demands and deliver it to the powers that be to make that thing happen.
Wow, very impactful. Thank you for expanding and expounding on that. Excellent. Victor, you're up next. And I want to ask you, because I know that you are worked with a lot with holistic and different approaches. So how do you incorporate holistic health approaches in your work? And why do you believe they are important for individuals living with HIV?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Victor Velasquez. My pronouns are he, him, and his. You know, and as I started to really kind of think about this question and the other question, you know, I started to think about the arc of my kind of relationship and experience with HIV. And I came to the conclusion that in July, it would be my 30th year of living with HIV. 3 decades of this. And then I reflected back, because I'm beginning a novel around, you know, some of my trauma and childhood experiences and how that translated into how I became a man. I started thinking back on that arc, and I said, wow, when I first heard about HIV, the only thing that came to mind was HIV equals death. And when I found out my status, when I got the test results back, it was actually when I was in the criminal justice system, going through the judicial process to get sentenced to what ultimately became a 6 to 18-year sentence in New York State prison system, and wound up in Attica prison, saying to myself, I'm going to die in jail. I'm going to die here. And that death is going to be really horrific. That's all I knew about it. And in that moment, when I was on that bus ride to Attica, right, and getting processed, I said to myself, what do I really know about this? And how am I going to do this? Am I just going to die, or am I going to learn about this? And in that ride, I came to a decision internally and said, you know what? I don't really know anything about this. Let me learn what this is all about. And that became my educational arc, to learn everything about HIV. And that became my passion and actually sustained me in what ultimately became a 12 years at its 18-year sentence, because I got conditionally released because of the nature of my crime. And that began my journey with commitment to not only learning about HIV, but being an advocate and teaching other people that HIV is not a death sentence. And so now to the question, how do I incorporate holistic healing approaches? Number one, I knew nothing about holistic healing. To me, holistic healing was smoking weed and taking a nip and drinking and chilling back. But as I became educated, I learned that the more serenity and peace I have, and the more I incorporate things that can produce serenity, the more my immune system will actually work for me instead of against me. So what I kind of do now in my life, I started to understand that I didn't have enough spirituality in my life. So I enrolled in a Buddhist monastery to learn not only about what Buddhism is, but also to practice meditation and to incorporate some meditative practices in my life. The other thing that I do is I participate in a lot of different endeavors. I'm part of the HIV Planning Council in Washington State. I'm part of the NMAC 50 plus cohort. I participate in support groups where other men like myself that are cisgender Latino men can kind of find a forum to say, hey, what's going on? How can we talk about it? How can we process maybe some of our childhood issues, some of our childhood trauma, and some of the issues that form us, and actually kind of motivate some of the behavior patterns that a lot of times we don't know that's driving us. So the other thing that when it comes to holistic, I learned that the more I incorporate peace and serenity in my life, the more I want to be grounded.
Okay, so thank you, Victor. But you know, I know also that as someone that used to work with you at Exponents, you also were very good with meditation and helping the students to relax before class, and also incorporating a lot of different techniques that help people relax after class as well. So I know that that you also did that as a form of your teaching at Exponents, the Arrive program. I
Very
also know that you're a techie. You know what I mean? You like to do and dabble in technology.
Mhm.
So let me ask you, how do you see the role of technology evolving in HIV/AIDS education and support? And are there any specific tools, because I know you showed me some tools, or platforms you find particularly effective in helping to spread the message of HIV through technology?
Well, I know that in this day and age, technology is the new frontier. Like, we can't use the old school approaches and be as effective as we can now by using some of the platforms that are available. So what I've learned how to do is become very familiar with what's available out there. So I know now that there are major platforms, like for example, YouTube. So always availing myself of YouTube videos as a distraction mechanism, I started to look at how can I use YouTube now as a platform to further the educational curve of people that don't know that much about HIV, or about chronic illness, or about aging with HIV, or about HIV in the brain, or about conquering HIV. So I created a YouTube channel. Found at YouTube, www.youtube.com, VMV Creation. And on that platform, I upload daily now shorts and long form videos around 10 to 15 minutes in duration. That's considered long form, actually. And what that does, the long form dives in deep. The shorts kind of give you snippets of what is contained in long form video. And what that does is it allows people to kind of navigate to my channel and become educated. I also learned that there's ways now with the technology available that I can take an idea in the written format and translate it into a video. So what I do now is I'll take research papers, I'll take articles and the gist of different ideations around HIV and chronic illness and put it into different formats, like, for example, in video, which is an available platform, and also Pictory, which is another available platform where you can upload storylines, narratives. If you're a good writer or you have your own story, you could type it out as a narrative and it'll create a video for you. And then you can edit the video on that platform and get your message out. We never had that. 10 years ago, we didn't have that. And if I would have had that as a trainer, exponent, as a person that was teaching HIV and AIDS, I would have created my own videos that were dead on point. I had to use videos that were on YouTube or on other platforms and hope that it hit the message that I wanted to hit. Now I create my own videos with the message that's dead on and gets the message out clearly and concisely.
Excellent, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you for the insightful contributions and so far. So now I'd like to open the floor to questions to our panelists, or if you as panelists have questions for each other or some of the things that were shared, when you'd like to elaborate even a little further on some of your points that you've made, now is the opportunity to do it. I'm going to open the floor for questions. And I see we have some comments in the chat. I have a lot of excellent comments in the chat, even though my computer won't let me see them. Okay, here we go. So we have some support from the Elevate program. Shantae's big up in everybody. You know, we have Jen said a lot of support for some of the things that were being said. You know, we have a lot of good comments and compliments. So when anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I like to share that. One of the things that is coming up that I'm going to be releasing on my channel is HIV in the brain, and that the brain is a major reservoir now for HIV. And though we can be undetectable if we are living with HIV and still be undetectable in the bloodstream, the fact of the matter is that it still resides in these reservoirs, particularly in the brain. And some of the medications we take don't pass the blood-brain barrier, so it doesn't actually reduce viral replication in the brain. So we're doing a lot of studies on that, and I'm trying to amplify that message out there because a lot of us don't take our medications consistently. A lot of us don't introduce holistic mechanisms into our life, like exercising and understanding that as we exercise, it's almost as good as taking Prozac as it reduces stress and anxiety in the person that may suffer from that. So education is the key. So I like to invite all of you to participate in my channel, connect with me. Let's create some messages that can get out there and really connect people not only to the topic, but to the issue of marginalized communities and their voiceless, endeavors.
Thank you, Victor. Okay, so Jen says she's guilty of that. Okay, so Jules Levin says cognitive impairment, frailty run at a higher rates in older people with HIV. And yeah, we know that we have that accelerated inflammation. Yes. Thank you, Jules. So again, yes, Jen, you can unmute and ask your question. I see you, Jen. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good evening. Hey to my dadas out there. I just want to applaud each and every one of you for allowing your voice to be heard. As an individual that has been living with an HIV diagnosis now for almost going on 6 years, what I've learned is that if we don't open our mouths and put our voices out there in this universe, people's views about HIV is not going to change. So I just want to applaud you and let you know that I'm on board with all of you opening my mouth, putting it out there. For real, I'm just trying to balance life and everything else. And so you all motivate me to continue doing the things that I am doing too as well. reduce stigma and point out the fact, as Miss Melanie said, hello, there's different layers of stigma. There's all kinds of stigma. It's not just HIV. Oh, you bald-headed? Oh, man, you bald-headed. What's wrong with you? There's stigma about that. I'm just being an example, but I'm just saying, so we have to really work on getting individuals on this planet to understand and process the fact that regardless of our HIV diagnosis, we're still human beings just like they are. So
absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. Absolutely. Yes. So I see you, AJ. So Tisha says there's a lot of positive information. I especially like the message about support from family and friends. I always have and will support my daughter, Yonsei. She has made me proud to be her mother. You got big support. Yes. Yes, AJ.
So I'm a big nerd when it comes to this. And also this is one of the skills that I picked up while going through the Block and Elevate program. So if for folks that don't know, the newest HIV surveillance just came out, and my hypothesis has come true from the guys like us initial start point. I said that trans men would be among a new emerging population, along with folks that do not fit within the binary. And just to have those numbers, trans women is up by 25%, trans men are up by 23%, and another gender identified people are up by 154%. So when the community says this is going to happen, please start believing the community, because trust me, we're doing the research ourselves. We see it happening. We're in these communities. We need folks to actually believe us when we're actually saying things.
Absolutely. Thank you. Oh, Yonsei, thank you so much, AJ. Yonsei, you can just unmute and say whatever you need to say.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say I belong to so many different communities, but the HIV community, the love that is shown, the respect, the encouragement, the tools, the mentors who took the time to mentor me. It's just beautiful. And it was only because I've been in this community since I was 15 years old. So they kind of watched me grow, make mistakes, call me on my stuff. But one thing I could say about this community is we will come together and we will stand up for what we know to be right and the truth.
Thank you so much. This is such a wise panel. I'm so in awe of you guys, So as we come to a close, panel discussion, yeah, that's family. I want to thank each of our incredible panelists for sharing their powerful stories and invaluable insights. Thank you all for joining us today and for your continued support and dedication, spreading awareness and fostering a supportive environment for those of us living and aging with HIV. What this panel all showed us was that together we continue to drive positive change and we can empower one another. Victor, you wanted to have another before we close? Yes.
Yeah, is it possible to get a copy of the chat? Because there's some contact information there of other people. I try to make a copy. I think I did kind of drag it and highlighted to copy it.
Okay, so
yeah, if it's possible. If not, I'll just grab it from the
I would ask Shauna if she could give me some support around that. I don't know.
Okay, cool.
We recorded to the cloud, so I'm not sure if that's an opportunity that is available.
Okay,
Victor,
cool. Yeah, it's all good. I grabbed it anyway. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you all. And we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Yeah, a real
and
pleasure.
Let's stay together, because this is a great group. Let's stay together.
Yonsei, it was good to see you, Yonsei. Yeah. Reach out.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.